Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Ajalam here. Thank you so much for tuning in, and if this is your first time of coming across my channel, kindly subscribe and turn on the bell icon so that you get to know anytime I post a new video. So for today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make a baby girl dress with a yoke. So if you're interested, keep on watching. Things I'll be using to make this dress. Here is a fabric flower. I think this is made of chiffon. So I have 1.5 yard of this, and this is a leftover fabric which I'll be using for the upper parts of this dress. So here is my satin, my lining, and my net. So I'm going to start by drafting out the upper bodice. So here I have my paper on fold, and I'll be using a year-old baby girl measurement for this dress. So now the bodice length is 7 inches plus 1 inch for sewing allowance. That will be 8 inches. So I'm going to mark that now to a straight line. So here I have the 8 inches, which is the bodice length, including the sewing allowance. So the next thing to do is to mark out the armhole measurement, which is 4¼ So this is 4¼ So I'm going to connect to a straight line after marking it. Okay, so that is the armhole line, which is also the chest line. So I'm going to mark out the shoulder measurement is 8. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So this is 4, and I'm going to mark the same on this armhole line, and then I'll connect to a straight line. So the next thing to do is to mark out the neck width, which is 2 inches. I'll be using 2 inches for the neck width and 1¾ for the neck depth, and then I'm going to connect. Here you can decide any neckline to use. You can decide to make it V, round, any shape of your choice. So here I'm going to come down by ½ inch for the shoulder slope. So this is ½ inch, and then I'll connect. Okay, so now I'm going to determine the midpoint. This is 3¾ So I'm going to fold my tape this way to determine the midpoint. So this is the midpoint. So that is the midpoint there. So I'm going to go in by ½ inch. I am using ½ inch here because the baby is a bit chubby. Okay, so this is ½ inch. Then I'm going to mark the chest measurement, which is 22 divided by 4 is 5.5, and then I will connect. So after connecting now, I'll add my side sewing allowance. So at this point here, I'm going to add ½ inch for my sewing allowance. Now the waist measurement is 21, and 21 divided by 4 is 5¼ which is here, plus ½ inch for sewing allowance. So I'm going to connect that. So now the bodice is ready. The next thing to do is to determine where the yoke is going to be. Now this is the midpoint. I'm going to connect that to a straight line. Okay, so now this is the midpoint here. On that point, I am going to mark out, I'm going to mark ½ inch downwards from that line. This is ½ inch. Okay, and then I'm going to connect. This is what I'll be using as the yoke. Okay, so I only use this to illustrate or to guide you. This line is no longer needed. So this is the yoke now. This is where the net or the lace that I want to use will be, just this. Okay, while this other one is going to be on this other part. So now I'll be cutting it this way. From here I'm going to cut this off. Then when I want to cut on my fabric, I'm going to add the sewing allowance for just this part here. Before all that, I'm going to cut or draft out the back pattern. As you can see, I have the bodice length here, which is 8. This is 8 inches, and I have 1 inch here for the zipper allowance. So I'm going to repeat all I did here. Remember, I used the neck width is 2 inches, and for the neck depth here now, I am going to make it 1/2 inch. Okay, and then the armhole measurement we use 4¼ I am going to connect that. I am rushing this because it's almost the same thing I did on the front pattern. Okay, so this is the chest line or the armhole line. So I'll connect the neck, that's the back neckline. Okay, and then I'm going to mark the shoulder, which is 4 inches. This is 4 inches here. And then I'll also mark out same 4 inches here as well, and then I'll connect. There's no sleeve to this dress, so I would want the back armhole to be the same with the front. Okay, this part is optional. If you like, you can also use the normal way we draft back armhole to do that. Okay, so now this is it. I'll go down by 1/2 inch for the shoulder slope. Okay, and I'll also determine the midpoint, which was here, and then I'll go in by 1/2 inch. Then the next thing is the chest measurement, which is 5.5 plus 1/2 inch for sewing allowance, which is here. And now the waist is 5¼ plus 1/2 inch for sewing allowance. Then I'll connect the necessary points together before we now determine the back yoke. So before that, here I'm going to go up by 1/2 inch. I believe if you're a returning subscriber, you should know reason for this. Okay, but if you're new, this is just to make the bag to have a good fit on the girl. Okay, so now this is the back. Now for the yoke, you can decide where to use, because this is the back side. You can decide how you want the yoke to be. So for me, I'm just going to I'll not be using the midpoint like I did for the front. I'm just going to place my ruler anywhere and give it the shape that I would want it to have. Okay, so I'll just go with this. You can also decide, just turn your ruler how you want it to be. So I'll just go with this. Okay, so now this part now will be the yoke, while this side will be the satin, because for the back I will not be adding this fabric rose, so I'll just make it plain with the satin. So this is how to go about this. I'm going to cut this out now and then cut it all out on my fabric. them all out. This is how it looks. Here I added the 1/4 inch for sewing allowance, and this is the upper part. This one will be here, and then we're going to stuff all this on this part. Okay, so this is the front, and this is how the back is going to look. Now you can see this is the shape that I use for the back pattern. Okay, so now the next thing to do, I'm going to keep this aside and then cut the down part of this dress. So here I have 5 yards of tulle nets. I just folded it for easy cutting. Now I'm going to mark out the length of the lower part of this dress. The length is 12 inches. So I'm going to add just 1/2 inch for sewing allowance, and then I'm going to cut as many that these 5 yards can give me, and that is what I'll be using for all. So I'm going to mark 12.5, and then I'll just cut through. So after cutting it all out, it gave me 5 pieces of that. So I'm going to open it up one after the other to gather it. But before that, I'm going to cut out the satin. So here is my satin. So I'm going to multiply the waist measurement by 2, and then I'll add 2 inches for zipper allowance. That is what I'm going to cut out on the satin. Now you can see my satin is just in 2 folds. So the waist measurement is 21, multiplied by 2 will give me 42, plus 2 inches for zipper allowance, that is 44. So I'm going to cut out 44 inches. Here I have 46 inches, so I'm going to use that instead of wasting that 1 inch. So I'm going to use all I need to do now is to cut out or mark out the length, which is 12 inches. So I'm going to mark exactly 12 inches. By the time I trim, I'll end up having it shorter than my net. You know, your satin should be shorter than the net so that it will not be coming out. So I'm going to mark out the 12 inches now and then cut. So this is it after cutting it out. Okay, so this is what I'll be using. By the time you gather, we'll have it, the gathers will be very small because I don't want this dress to be too heavy for the baby. So this is it. I'm going to cut the lining same way I did on this satin, and then we'll start sewing. I'm going to take this. So I'll start by joining it together with this. I'm going to sew this way, and I'll also sew this back. I'm going to join it together with this lace, and then I'll repeat the same on my lining. So this is it after joining it together, and this is the back, and I also did the same on my lining. Okay, so I'm going to join the shoulders together with the lining, and also sew the neckline before applying this to this other part. And to apply this, you can use gum, you can also use your hand needle to do this. For me, I'll be using hand needle so that it will last, because sometimes gum might not last. So I'll be using my hand now with my hand needle and stitch this on this part. As you can see, I just attached the fabric flower or fabric rose, though I did mine very light. So if you have enough, you can just stuff it. So if you want to make for this age, just get like 4 yards of this so that it will cover all this space. So here I stopped here because I need to join the down parts before I'll close up the remaining parts of this. So I only stop here so that it will allow me to close the armhole together. So now I'm going to close up the armhole, and before that, our April intensive online class is coming up soonest. So if you're interested in any of our classes, kindly check the description box for the number to reach out for more details on the classes. So I'm going to close the armhole now, and then I will give this a good press. Then I will now use my gather stitch and take this down part one after the other. I'm going to place them together, and then I'll use my gather stitch to run it all the way to the other end. Close the sides together, and I added a little belt to this. So this is the back side of it, and this is the front. So now I'm going to take the lower part, like I said earlier, is just to gather it and join it together with the satin, and this is what it looks. Okay, I just folded the 5 together here, and I just gathered that till I have the waist measurement. And this is my satin. I just did a little gathering on the satin, and then I joined the two together. So now I'm going to take this now and join it with this upper part separately, and I'll take my lining also and join with the lining separately. This is my lining. I did the same thing on it, so I'm going to join it with the lining, with the upper lining separately together. And as you can see, we are almost done with the dress. So let me just sew all this and we'll continue. So after joining it, as you can see, this is how it looks. This is the front, and this is the back, how it is. Okay, so now this part is where you will need to attach the remaining this part. You need to take the remaining of this now and attach it on the remaining side here, and you make sure to attach also on this, on that line, to close up this line here. This way you don't need to add any bow or anything on this part. Okay, so you need to do all that. After that, you now close the back side of the dress. So that is how easy and simple it is to go about this dress. So that is it for today. Please subscribe if you have not, and don't forget to turn on the bell icon so that you'll be the first to know anytime I post a new video. So that is it. See you all soon.